Well, everyone, I've been using the 24-inch iMac for I think about a week and a half now, and I guess, it's time for me to make a review. I've compared this to a couple of other things, I think, the Intel iMacs and stuff, and I can tell you, I like the 24-inch iMac. I think this is a great iMac for sure. Even from a value per dollar standpoint, it's actually pretty good, but I was coming from an M1 MacBook Pro, so I was a little skewed, but historically, I've owned both, an Intel MacBook and an Intel iMac, and I've enjoyed both of them. I love iMacs. I think they are amazing pieces of technology, and I think for the value that you're getting, it's such an insane value because I think a lot of people look at these iMacs and they say, oh, it's so overpriced because you can get like a Mac Mini for whatever it is, and it's like half the cost of a 24-inch iMac. Why would you want to get it? They're theoretically the same speed and everything, and you're getting more ports on that. But a lot of people forget one of the biggest features of these iMacs is actually the panel. The screen of these iMacs are in a really good quality. These are solid screens. I own a LG Ultrafine 5K display, and I spent I think around $1,000. I don't think it was exactly $1,000, but it was like $900, $1,000, even in like a certified refurbished market. And that's a really good panel, but it's kind of expensive. This iMac is only like a couple $100 more than that panel, and this has a full computer in it. And although it's a little bit smaller, it's still a very good panel, and I don't really think there's that big of a difference, at least a size difference, in terms of like a 27 to 24 inch. Like, I'm kind of used to it. It's not like a 27 and 21 inch, so there's like less of a change here, which is something I actually really do like. One of the biggest things though, and I will tell you from using this iMac that I thought was going to be a big deal, but I did kind of get used to it, was essentially the two USB Type-C ports on the base model on the back of these machines. I was kind of not a huge fan of it when they first released, just like with my M1 MacBook Pro only having two USB-C ports, but you kind of get used to it. But also, I mean, you really only need one port. Now, I'm not saying this because I want Apple to change the one port, but for my workflow, I only need, a dongle. I just need a dongle with a couple USB ports and an SD card. If I'm able to plug in a microphone to my computer and an SD card, that's all I need. I don't need anything else. Those are the only two things I use, and as long as I have that capability, I'm set. I don't have any like crazy equipment. I have to plug a bunch of stuff in. I'm a normal guy. I just have to plug in my stuff, like two things, and that's it. With the M1 iMac, it's perfectly fine. I do kind of see some issues though. If you plan on, using an external display, this could possibly cause some issue. You would need a Thunderbolt monitor, I believe, and that's already one USB port taken. So if you aren't planning on getting a dongle, then you're pretty much only having one USB port that you have to interchange. So hopefully, I would recommend getting a dongle, but this is one of the only other M1 products that actually support dual monitors. My M1 MacBook Pro doesn't support it. I think maybe the M1 Mac Mini, maybe, but for the M1 MacBook Pros and the M1 MacBook Airs, you can only use one monitor at a time, which is very dumb. Hopefully they change that in the future, but it is what it is. There's nothing we can really do about it. Now, flipping it to the front, I've talked so much about the front and everything, but another thing that kind of threw me off when Apple actually announced it was the chin. I was like, this is a new product, but they had a white bezel around it, then they had a big chin. Luckily, from I think everyone's perspective, the white bezel isn't really that big of a deal. It isn't really a big deal to me, but it's just kind of an annoyance. I prefer the black bezel, but a lot of people said the white bezel bleeds into, the wall and everything. So you may be in that category. It's not like the consensus of everyone is that they hate the white bezel. It seems like it's like 75% like it, and then like 20% like don't really care, and then maybe the other percentage like hate it. I'm kind of like in that don't really care, but in the middle of hating it. Like, I would rather prefer having a black one. We can change the colors of everything, but we can't get like a black bezel. It doesn't make any sense. But just know that not that many people care about it, so I think it's totally okay. Funny enough, iFixit actually did go ahead and take this iMac apart, and they did see that a lot of it is just an empty space. So that makes me excited for the future of these products, because that just shows that Apple could potentially make almost like a bezel-less, kind of like a Apple 6K display kind of thing on their iMac. Now, they're never going to do that because that would cannibalize 6K display sales, but I think that would be something that's really awesome, and I think Apple may actually end up doing it for their 31-inch iMac, whatever, 32-inch, whatever one it's going to be. So I'm very, very excited about that. Now, that covers up essentially everything on the outside. Now, this thing also has that webcam on the front, and luckily for us, we're using webcams all the time. This one, I don't know if it looks way better, to be honest. Like, it looks almost the same as my M1 MacBook Pro, but the microphone, they did say it was a better quality, so I did go ahead and record some audio from it, and I'll go ahead and play that right now so you guys can hear it. So this is just some audio straight from the M1 iMac. I'm not editing this or anything like that, literally taking it from the iMac and putting it on my, video. and I haven't reheard this audio yet, but if it's anything just like my M1 MacBook Pro, it should be a pretty decent experience in my opinion. Now I can definitely tell you I'm sitting at it not extremely close, but very similar to if somebody is going to, it's probably like 3 feet away from me, probably not even, it's probably like 2 feet away from me, and it seems like it's picking it up fairly well. I am fairly sure it's not going to sound as good as my MacBook Pro unless I were to come extremely close to it. I know there's a microphone right next to the webcam, but I don't know if there's a microphone anywhere else. This is what the audio sounds like on an M1 iMac. Now, I did kind of listen to it afterwards, and I can tell you I'm not really super shocked. Like, it sounds pretty good. Like, it sounds better than my, Intel iMac or Intel MacBook from like 2015. I think though my M1 MacBook Pro still has the better, microphone. I don't know what it is. I think maybe because I can get closer to my M1 MacBook Pro versus my M1 iMac, because you usually have it a little bit further. I don't think anybody would be super shocked about the quality of this, microphone, but I have, recorded a couple of videos on my M1 MacBook Pro, and these things have the same, microphones. So if you know how to edit your audio a little bit, I don't even know how to edit audio. I just kind of mess with some things here and there and just, make it louder. If you know how to do those things, you're probably going to have a pretty decent experience with this M1 iMac microphone quality. So I don't want to spend 50 minutes talking about it, but that's actually, I think, more of a pro than anything else. And that's a pretty big advantage for the M1 iMac. Now, performance-wise, here's the thing. I was already coming from an M1 MacBook Pro. I still own it, and I still plan on owning it. So I was already, used to the performance. But here's the thing. I always forget how smooth and fast the device is when you first boot it up. Even with my iPhones, when you first boot up an iPhone and you mess with anything, it's blazing fast. The same thing essentially with the M1 iMac. You're pretty much getting you're getting one of the fastest devices out there. And I've said this before with my M1 iPad Pro review that I dropped yesterday. This is the future. These iPads, these iMacs with the M1 chips, these are the future. We're not going backwards. It's not like we're going to go back to Intel or we're going to back to the, A series of devices. So Apple is going to spend a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of effort on making sure their M1 chips are the best in the world. And I want to say that probably sometime in the future, Apple's probably going to start sourcing these M1 chips to other manufacturers, and they're going to make a bunch of money. It's going to be crazy. But for now, these things are the best in class. We see Samsung doing this with their panels. They have the best panels and they spend all this money on making phones that nobody buys, like the Galaxy Z Flip and the Galaxy Fold. So then by the time Apple goes ahead and wants to start selling a foldable phone, they'll just call up Samsung. They already have the best panels and they'll just source them out to there. So Samsung makes a ton of money on these things, and I think Apple's probably going to end up doing the same thing. And the performance of these, M1 iMacs are completely unbelievable. It's still really, really fast. I don't want to overhype it, but I am a huge fan of these M1, MacBooks, and I think with the M1 iMac, it's essentially the same thing. If you're going to do a lot of video editing and all that stuff, really the biggest issue you're going to run into is probably running out of storage. I would recommend getting like the top tier storage you can afford, and I would probably recommend staying away from the base model if I'm being completely honest. But regardless, you're going to be getting a solid performing device from this. It's probably the best performing iMac ever, even above the 5K one. It's definitely above the 5K one. The software updates of this thing are going to be up there with the probably iPhone level, which they've been before. Probably even better than iPhone level, to be honest. But another main thing to keep in mind is that for a lot of people out there, if you want to get a device and not have to think about, is my MacBook compatible? Is it too old? If you get the M1 iMac for the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to be perfectly fine. I kind of related to, remember the 2012 Retina MacBook Pro? That was still completely relevant for so many years. To be honest, even the 2016 one, but the keyboard issues. But visually, when you look at a 2012 Retina MacBook Pro, even now, it really doesn't look that old. It still looks pretty current, even though it's, older, has a glow up Apple logo and all that stuff. There's a lot of features for it, and I'm a huge fan of it, and I think that pretty much sums up this review. I think it's a really good iMac. I really think if it's between an M1 iMac or like an Intel iMac, I think this one is probably the better way to go. It's just a no-brainer. The panel is beautiful. It's going to be future-proofed for a very long time. It's performance heavy. Like, for bang per dollar standpoint, this is a very good option. But the thing is, I already have my M1 MacBook Pro, and to be honest, I'm more of a iMac person. I look forward to always using my iMac way more than I liked using my MacBook when I had both, and I still have both, obviously. But my M1 MacBook Pro is super fast, and essentially they're the same speed, if I recall. the main thing with the iMac though is that you don't have to buy another display. I love docking my, MacBook to a bigger display. I hate using it on that 13-inch panel. I like using it on a much bigger panel. And when you have something like the M1 iMac, you're risking portability. You can't really take it with you anywhere, like you can't use it in the car. But for an at-home workstation, amazing. I love it. But I like my M1 MacBook Pro because everything is on there and I can just dock it up to my LG Ultrafine 5K display and move on. But it's a big investment. Like, I don't want to have to buy a $1,000 panel for my already $2,000 MacBook. Like, it takes a lot of money. And with this thing, I mean, you're getting an all-in-one package. Yeah, you're risking portability, but it's a solid machine, and I'm a huge fan of these M1 iMacs. So that's essentially it. That's my, quick little review of this M1 iMac, I guess a week later. If you guys have any other questions or anything, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys could hit that. Also, check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my other channels. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.